Welcome back. We begin our bulletin from the UK, which has officially left the European Union after 47 years of membership, over 3 years after voting in a referendum. In a tweet, Prime Minister Boris Johnson promised to bring the country together and take it forward. More in this report.
3, 2, 1.
The flags outside embassies have been lowered and the countdown clocks have stopped. The United Kingdom is no longer a member of the European Union. UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson marked the historic moment with his team at Downing Street office. Brexiteers celebrated the day, claiming victory and calling it Independence Day.
Something that I fought for 27 years, and something that many thousands of you gave your time, love and money for. We faced an establishment that never even wanted to listen to us. An establishment that never wanted that referendum to take place. An establishment that has tried for 3.5 years to frustrate the will of the greatest democratic mandate ever seen in this country.
Brexit has exposed deep divisions in British society, with many fearing the consequences of ending long and complicated ties with the nearest neighbours. Some pro-European protested the development with candlelit vigils.
It's just an overwhelming sense of sadness, really. I mean, yes, I'm disappointed to some extent because I'm still pro-EU, and I'd hope that, well, something could have changed in the years since the referendum, and obviously that hasn't materialised, but yeah, at the moment it's just sadness, and seeing the UK leave is, yeah, it's just sad, really, really sad.
The European Union's leaders say they will defend the bloc's interests in upcoming negotiations with the UK. President Charles Michel, David Sassoli and Ursula von der Leyen sent their good wishes to the country. They also pointed out that Britain will no longer enjoy the same benefits as EU member states.
We want to have the best possible relationship with the United Kingdom, but it will never be as good as membership. Our experience has taught us that strength does not lie in splendid isolation, but in our unique union.
Britons voted to leave the European Union in a referendum in 2016.
Scottish National Party leader Nicola Sturgeon says she is ready to step up the campaign for Scottish independence post-Brexit. In a speech in Edinburgh, Sturgeon says her party has the political support to hold another referendum. She was referring to 3 previous UK Parliament elections at which her party won majority backing in Scotland. Earlier this week, members of the devolved Scottish Parliament voted to back her cause for a fresh vote, which she wants to be held as early as this year. But UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson has rejected the party's requests to formally transfer powers from London to Edinburgh for the referendum. Moving on to China, where the death toll from the Wuhan coronavirus has risen to 259. Health officials say nearly 12,000 people have been infected by the virus. More in this report.
The US has declared coronavirus a national health emergency and imposed a quarantine. All major US airlines have cancelled flights to mainland China. Australia's Qantas Airways said the entry restrictions imposed by the US have also forced it to suspend its flight to China from February 9th. The center of the epidemic, China's Hubei province, remains under virtual quarantine, with roads sealed off and public transport shut down. Officials say the local government is stepping up efforts to ensure continued medical and market supplies in Wuhan.
Our medical staff are also in shortage. As the number of patients increase, there's an increasing demand for our medical staff. But the shortage also has eased to some extent as medical teams, including those from the Chinese People's Liberation Army, continued to arrive in support of us.
Yesterday, the UK also confirmed its first 2 cases of the coronavirus after World Health Organization declared the outbreak a global emergency.
In Trump's impeachment trial, the U.S. Senate has voted to exclude witness testimony and documents in the trial. The motion was rejected by a vote of 51 to 49, paving the way for Trump's acquittal on 2 articles of impeachment. The Senate will hold its final vote on whether or not to acquit Trump on February 5th. Trump was impeached on charges of abuse of power and obstruction of Congress. The first charge stemmed from allegations that Trump pressured Ukraine to damage presidential candidate Joe Biden for his own political benefit. In the second charge, the president is accused of purposefully obstructing the congressional impeachment investigation. Trump has denied wrongdoing and has accused Democrats of an attempted coup. More from the U.S. The U.S. says it will expand its limits on immigration to 6 more countries. Homeland Security Secretary Chad Wolf said citizens from Nigeria, Eritrea, Sudan, Tanzania, Kyrgyzstan, and Myanmar will no longer obtain some types of visas. Speaking to reporters, Wolf said the government will also stop issuing diversity visas to Tanzania and Sudan. Wolf said non-immigrant visas for the countries are not affected. He said a failure to meet U.S. security and information sharing standards led to the ban. Immigration advocates and rights groups have criticized the move, saying it weaponizes immigration law to advance a xenophobic agenda. In 2017, President Donald Trump introduced the travel ban on 12 countries, most of them with Muslim majorities. Meanwhile, the U.S. has eased travel advisory for Pakistan while acknowledging the security environment in the country has significantly improved. The development comes days after the UK eased travel restrictions to the country over improved security situation. In a statement, U.S. State Department said there are greater security resources and infrastructure in the major cities of Pakistan. Noting the update, Pakistan's Foreign Office has described the development as a step in the right direction. The Foreign Office said Islamabad has made resolute efforts to enhance security throughout the country. It said the improvement in security has also led UN to redesignate Islamabad as a family station for its personnel. It said the development offers opportunities for enhanced economic activity and foreign direct investment in Pakistan. Pakistan's Prime Minister Imran Khan says India is preparing to repeat a Myanmar-like genocide of its minority population. In an interview, he said as many as 500 million people will be excluded from the citizenship list under India's controversial law. To a question, the Prime Minister said Bangladesh has refused to take migrants who have been excluded from the citizenship list. He said Pakistan's utmost urgency will be to douse the raging fire in the Islamic world. Prime Minister Khan also rejected criticism of CPEC and brushed aside fears about China's debt. He hoped that the scheduled visit of the Turkish president in February will enhance trade partnership between the two countries. In another advancement of Hindutva ideology, India's right-wing leader Updesh Rana has vowed to counter ongoing sit-in at Shaheen Bagh in the capital, New Delhi. The all-women protest has continued against the controversial Citizenship Act since December 16th. The radical leader said he and his youth brigade will reach Shaheen Bagh on 9 February. Rana said his organization wants to launch a counter sit-in as they also have women to support them. Meanwhile, ruling Bharatiya Janata Party's leader Sangeet Som has called for the public execution of Muslim activist Sharjeel Imam. Speaking to the media, Som said, "People like Imam talk about breaking the nation, so they must be shot dead." Now on to new developments in the Middle East. The US has warned Palestine against opposing President Trump's Middle East plan at the UN. Trump's plan gives Israel a green light to annex key parts of the occupied West Bank. The US ambassador to the UN, Kelly Craft, says taking up the case at the world body will only repeat the failed pattern of the last 7 decades. Palestine's President Mahmoud Abbas will speak on the scheme at the UN Security Council in the next 2 weeks. UN envoy Riyad Mansour said Palestine hopes the UNSC will vote on a draft resolution on the issue. Muslim states and most European countries have rejected Trump's deal, calling it unacceptable. Israeli warplanes have bombed multiple locations in the Gaza Strip. The Israeli Defense Ministry says aircraft struck Hamas posts in retaliation to rocket fire. It said 2 rockets from the Gaza Strip headed for settlements were intercepted in the air. No casualties have been reported so far. Earlier, the Israeli military said it had launched wide-scale attacks on militant targets in the Gaza Strip. The attacks came amid heightened tensions after US President Donald Trump released his Mideast peace plan. Israeli forces have wounded 50 Palestinians protesting against US President Donald Trump's Middle East peace deal. Palestine Red Crescent Society said Israeli forces fired tear gas and rubber bullets in West Bank and Gaza Strip. It said a total of 13 demonstrators have been hospitalized. 5 shells have struck a military base housing US forces in Iraq's northern province of Nineveh. In a statement, the Iraqi military said there were no casualties in the attack. The military said Katyusha rockets landed at the perimeter of Al-Qaeda Air Base. The attack came a week after thousands of protesters called for a scheduled withdrawal of US troops from the country. On January 5th, the Iraqi parliament passed a resolution to end the presence of foreign forces. We have a lot more coming up right after this short break, so stay tuned. Welcome back. Japan says it is planning to install a US missile defense system called the Aegis ashore. In an interview, Defense Minister Taro Kono said the move is to protect the country from any North Korean threat. The Defense Ministry has chosen the city of Akita in northeastern Japan as one of 2 potential locations for the system. Elsewhere, Japan has already sent patrol planes to the Middle East for an intelligence gathering mission. Kono said the mission is designed to ensure safe navigation of commercial ships with links to Japan. He said the Self-Defense Force is Tokyo's response to Washington's call for an international maritime coalition. Poland has finalized an agreement to buy 32 F-35 fighter jets from the US in a multi-billion-dollar deal to revamp its air force. The agreement was signed by Polish Defense Minister Mariusz Bielecki and the US Ambassador to Warsaw, Georgette Mobaker. The agreement also includes pilot training, flight simulators, and logistical support. In September, the US approved a $4.6 billion contract to deliver 32 aircraft to its NATO ally. The first batch is scheduled for delivery within 4 years. Polish President Andrzej Duda called it an important day for Warsaw's military aviation and security. Poland's Air Force already has 50 US F-16 fighter jets. Four people have been killed during a fresh wave of protests in Chile's capital, Santiago. Demonstrations appear to have calmed, but this week has seen a rise in violent protests. Officials say one man died of suffocation after a supermarket was set on fire, while another was shot dead by police. They said one was killed when he was hit by a hijacked bus and another after being struck by a policeman. Over 30 people have died in protests that began in October when the government increased metro fares. On to the UN, which is looking for ways to scale up its humanitarian aid in response to the recent military escalation in northwest Syria. In a press briefing, the UN General Secretary's spokesperson, Stéphane Dujarric, said dozens of civilians have been killed by recent airstrikes and shelling in Idlib. Dujarric said he regretted many medical facilities have suspended their work because of the growing insecurity in the region. He said humanitarian organizations are still trying to organize and support the evacuation of people. The spokesperson said the situation in Idlib is worsening. The UN also urged the warring sides to spare civilians and to help humanitarian activities. The UN Security Council has approved a 6-month relaxation of an arms embargo on the Central African Republic. 13 of the Council's 15 members voted for the resolution, with China and Russia abstaining. The resolution allows the Central African Republic to acquire military vehicles after notifying the UN ahead of time. France drafted the resolution, which reimposes the arms embargo at the end of July. China said the resolution did not respect the wishes of the CAR authorities. Russia's UN envoy Dmitry Polyansky said the resolution did not take all arguments into consideration. UN Organization Stabilization Mission in DR Congo has awarded Pakistani female peacekeepers with medals. This is Pakistan's first female mission to receive any UN award for its services. In a statement, the mission said the officers throughout their deployment worked hard to win the trust of the community. 15 female officers, including ranks of major and captain, were honored in a ceremony in South Kivu region. The officers are psychologists, stress counselors, gender advisors, doctors, nurses, information officers, and logistics officers. Another team of 17 women will join the mission this month. In Egypt, archaeologists have discovered centuries-old tombs belonging to priests in the southern governorate of Minya. The Ministry of Antiquities says 20 more coffins unearthed at the site Al-Gharifa date back 2,500 years. More on the discovery in this report.
Centuries ago, Amarna, which is now the Egyptian governorate of Minya, was briefly the country's capital during the life of Pharaoh Akhenaten. Now, archaeologists survey and dig dozens of sites in the ancient city. One of their discoveries has huge potential: 16 communal tombs belonging to the high priests of a god called Jehuti.
These are 9 sarcophagi that are intact, not opened before. We opened them and found the mummies and the amulets, 9 sarcophagi in shafts.
Secretary General of the Antiquities Council, Mustafa Muziri, describes what has been found so far.
16 tombs and 20 stone sarcophagus, very good quality of limestone. And at the same time, we found more than 10,000 statues of Shawapti made out of faience. We found also 8 sets of the canopic jars.
Many hope these sites will soon have a new life and bustle by attracting tourists and the much-needed revenue they bring.
Now let's look at the weather from around the globe. This is all for now. For the latest updates, you can follow us on social media at indus.news.